Hey folks, Malforian here, and today we're going to be covering Tinto Talks 14, which is around this new flavorful system that Johan teased us with last week, and this is going to be called the Situation System. This is how they're going to kind of recreate mostly famous events that happened in history and how they're going to work in the game. And it's kind of funny, I did a video yesterday about how railroaded people want EU5 to be, and this kind of links into it, so I guess that was good timing by me. If you did miss that, that is the last video that was on the channel, but we're just going to get straight into the dev diary itself. As always, not a massive dev diary, but it is going to give us a rough overview of the system, and then some pretty good examples as well with some fantastic maps. Yes, map painting game showing us maps today. The core of this system is actually one of the first things they designed in spring 2020, so when they were really starting to ramp up the production of EU5 / Project Caesar. This was one of the things they really looked at as being one of the systems they wanted to build in early, and obviously that is what they did, and they wanted it to drive the narrative and mechanical side of the game and kind of guide the game how it works in certain situations. This is something that's been inspired by the instant system in EU4, and then also the international crisis mechanic in Victoria 2, but it's not really like either of those, Johan says. I would say it is also a little bit like, and don't mash that dislike button, but kind of like the struggle system in Crusader Kings 3. It doesn't work the same way, but if you want to think of it as like a localized system that just affects that region, think of it a little bit that way as well. If you have played Crusader Kings 3, I think a lot of players aren't a massive fan of the struggle system, so I'm not saying it works the same, but think of it as that kind of like localized system where it kind of affects one area, and if you're outside of it, it doesn't really affect you directly. But as I said, they're going to get into it. And one of the first things they're actually going to show off here, kind of semi-linked, I suppose, is just some art for characters in the game. This isn't how the characters are going to look in the game, I wouldn't presume, just by the art style. But again, just kind of showing us kind of how it matches the art that we've already seen released. But then obviously the main question we've got, what is the situation system? And that is a good question, Johan says here, and it definitely is. You could describe it as content that involves multiple countries over a period of time. In Project Caesar, they are using the system to create historical narratives that create different experiences, as our goal is to have an immersive and varied experience for the players. We're going to see this especially in the Italian War section they're going to cover later. You're going to see how that part of it works. A situation could have unique events, events that trigger, and other types of unique content, and each of them will have their own UI and map mode, which is awesome. Again, we're going to see that for the Black Death and the Italian War section as well. And then very similar to the struggle system, if a situation is going to affect you or involve you, you will have an alert, and it's going to be in a new color of purple. I don't know why he felt the need to call out the color purple, but I'm down for it. And here we go. This is going to be the first one. This is going to be the Black Death. Now here, you'll see as a screenshot, there's actually some information on here that's not related to this, which is very interesting. But you can see, obviously, the Black Death, it starts in 1346. This can be randomized, turned off, or set to the historical start. The Black Death origin, you can obviously choose where it comes from. Again, I would imagine it's Central Asia, roughly around there, or you can maybe hit it as random, and it will just start anywhere on the map. There's the Byzantine name, which obviously isn't really linked to this dev diary, and it looks like you can have it by the default name, or I guess you could have it as like the Eastern Roman Empire. I think that was the name of it in one of the screenshots last week. That is what you can change with that one. And then very interestingly, ledger information, show all. All information is displayed. What does this mean? We don't know. We don't know what this means. I would kind of hope this means, and I've always said this for a lot of Paradox games, that I wonder if you can't see detailed information about other nations unless you've got like a spy set up there or something like that. So you can't just click on anywhere on the map and see pretty much all the information about that realm, how much money they've got, things like that. You're not going to be able to see that potentially. Maybe you can't see their army size unless you have this set to show all. I wonder if the other options are like obfuscated information, so you can't see things unless you spy on them, or maybe have a diplomat there or something like that. I think that's actually awesome. I've always said this system should come to Crusader Kings 3. There's a fantastic mod called Obfuscate, which basically does this anyway. But I do think it's kind of weird that you can look anywhere on the map, even outside of your diplomatic range, and see like how powerful someone is, and then make decisions based on that. I think you should have to do something to get that information. Maybe you can see basic stuff. But anyway, we don't know what this is. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Would you be down for that? Would you be down for like obfuscated information unless you have a spy or a diplomat or something? Maybe a special building that does something around that. Or maybe if you just bring your fleet nearby, you can kind of see some information about what they have. I think that would be pretty cool to bring in with EU5. But again, let me know what you think in the comments down below. A bit of a tangent there, but we're going to get straight back to the Black Death information. So usually, as I said, this will happen in 1346. As the bubonic plague came from somewhere in Central Asia and will start spreading through the old world. It killed 40 to 60% of the population in those affected areas. It was, a pretty bad time. I've seen a lot of comments saying, due to the earlier start time, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of balancing actions the Black Death are going to have, because obviously in different campaigns, it's going to affect different areas more or less. Like, for the most part, it is going to hit the same places because it basically attacks everywhere. But you might see weird things happening, obviously, depending on how bad it affects certain places at certain times during your campaigns. And then the plague itself, it spreads through adjacencies, moving armies, and through trade, interestingly. So I guess if you move an army through somewhere that is plague-ridden, and then move that army into somewhere else, there's a chance it will kind of drag the plague along with them, which is an interesting mechanic. And then through trade as well, which we will see in the next screenshot, you can see it's actually moved into Italy, the south of France, and I guess that is through these trade routes we're going to have in the game and kind of carrying the plague with them, which is obviously historically how that happens, so it's pretty cool to see it in game. And there are ways you can alleviate this though, but the efficiency of this is low and the cost is high, because obviously the Black Death was pretty bad. There wasn't really anything at the time that could really prevent it that much, so it is good to see that you can attempt to do it, but the cost is crazy high, so I guess most players, you're just going to ride it out and see what happens. And it's not like Crusader Kings where your dynasty dies and it's kind of game over. You are playing as a country, so it's a little bit different here. It is going to be punishing, but it's not like game over. Well, it could be, I suppose, if you get so weakened, somebody takes you over. But anyway, that is a topic for another time. You can isolate your court, expel the sick, blame minorities, and other very efficient ways to deal with the problem. I wonder what the other very efficient ways are. I do wonder whether you could use this in warfare. Maybe if you have plague lands, you can take some bodies with you, fling them over the walls, and, hilarity ensues with the defenders there. But as you can see, there's different ways you can deal with this. Even if you can't deal with the disease yourself, it looks like maybe you can have some modifiers depending on how else you kind of deal with the issue itself. So not preventing it maybe, but kind of, as it says here, blaming other people and saying like, I'm fine, don't affect my stability because these other people were the reason. We'll see a lot more information about this in the future. And then, as I said, you can see the screenshot here. You can see the Golden Horde there, very densely affected by it, and then it's spreading to the other places. You can see a little bit up here in Novgorod, as I said, in Italy, France. So I guess that's where there's some trade nodes maybe, and that's why it's getting dragged into Europe and further west as well. And I'm sure by the end, this will all be green and red, and we'll have a lot of repercussions from it. And with that, that covers the Black Death portion. I think it's really cool getting this information, giving us a good example of how this is going to work and how it's going to affect you and how you can kind of deal with it. And with that, that's the end of the Black Death section. Just a brief overview, as I said, but it is cool to get that map mode, seeing how it's going to work, seeing that trade and things like that are going to affect it. I think this is going to be a pretty good implementation. But the next one, as I said, is going to be the Italian Wars. This is going to be the second situation they're showing off. And in the Age of Discovery, this is probably the most important situation for anyone in Western Europe. It is all about control over Italy and will happen as soon as a French or Iberian major power or emperor declares war on an Italian power. So, as they will show later, there are different ways for this to trigger, which, as I said, the video I did yesterday, we kind of covered this as a possibility, these like historical things that happened, and whether there could be different ways for the same event to happen, and it looks like that is potentially the case. There will be up to 6 different leagues that will fight over the control of Italy. There will be the French League, the Iberian League, the Emperor's League, and up to 3 Italian leagues as well. The first 2 will dynamically select their leader based on strength calculation, so whichever is the strongest French ruler, they will be in charge of that. And then Iberia as well, probably going to be the Crown of Castile every time, but you never know, depending on when it happens. If one league gets hegemony over Italy, i.e. owning more than 60% of the region, either through conquest or diplomacy, then they will win. The Italians can also win by making sure the foreign leagues are destroyed through a special peace deal. So I guess if you fight off their armies enough, I guess maybe if you can influence them some other way, you get a special peace deal, and then I guess it ends and you kind of keep Italy independent. Leagues can be abandoned, and anyone owning locations in Italy can join one of them. So again, very similar to the struggle system in Crusader Kings, where it is in Iberia, for example. And if you somehow end up in Iberia later on, you are kind of brought into the struggle, so it sounds like that is the case here as well. The situation allows for enemies and rivals of foreign league leaders to intervene and assist the defending Italians, and it also grants access to unique interactions in order to send aid of any kind, attract cheaper condottieri, and even create a new Italian league. So this system already looking fantastic for the Italian Wars. All these different ways it's going to work, as you can see from the screenshot here, showing Aragon, France, Naples, obviously all the rest of Italy, Austria as well look like they're involved. And then it's going to play out and see how this happens. And as it said there, it looks like there's different ways it can be triggered. You can play as France, maybe you attack Milan and then that's going to trigger it. Or maybe you're playing as Aragon and you attack Sicily and maybe that's going to attack it. Why did I pick Sicily? there's one person in the comments that's going to comment being very happy about it. But anyway, that is why I chose it, and that looks like how that's going to work. And I think that looks cool. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I think that's an awesome way for this to operate. Different ways it can trigger, but for the same kind of event. And this is obviously, as I say, such a pivotal moment in European history that it's cool that they've kind of got this situation system that they can specialize for each version of this. The Black Death one we've already seen, this one, and then we're going to see later on the Red Turban Rebellions as well, which is another way this works, which kind of looks a little bit different, but again, the same system in the background doing it. And as they say here, this is how the situation would work if it fired in 1337, if Austria was to be the Holy Roman Emperor, and Aragon was the dominant power in Iberia, with vested interest in Italy, due to their lands in Sardinia, I suppose. I like how everything's kind of grayed out apart from the people that are involved. I think that looks pretty nice. And then next, as I said, they're going to talk about the Red Turban Rebellions with the Yuan Empire in China, and then how this operates in the same system. So this is rather likely to happen as soon as the empire ends up in low stability. It will create an international organization called the Red Turbans, which will get a lot of rebel countries. The international organizations, that was covered last week, so if you're not sure what that means, watch last week's video that I did covering the dev diary on those. Just a loose affiliation of nations or something like that, and that's being used again in this system to facilitate the situation system as well. The situation can happen to Yuan after 1350, and if their stability drops below 25, whilst also either of their estates is not satisfied. The requirements are harsh, but once you reach the age of discovery, you will have avoided the situation, so it can't happen, I guess, after that happens, so they will stick around instead of fragmenting. With all that being said, though, the situation will most likely fire in most playthroughs. I think that makes sense. Obviously, historically it happens, so they've built it where it is kind of possible to avoid it as a player, but I would imagine pretty much every time the AI especially is going to get hit by it, and I would hope that as a player you're mostly hit by it as well, unless you're playing super optimal and somehow avoid it. During this period, the Red Turban Rebels will spawn as an international organization which is in direct opposition to the Chinese Emperor. While the situation is going on, events will pop up that will force Yuan to release historical Chinese tags in their historical order. So the first song is released, then Wu, who join the international organization and immediately declare their own independence war on the Yuan. Each rebel nation is playable when it spawns, and they can wage war with each other too. Now, each rebel nation is playable when it spawns? Maybe I'm missing something there. Does that mean you can switch to play as them if you want to? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I'm just missing something obvious here and I'm reading too much into it, but each rebel nation is playable when it spawns. Let me know what you think that means. Like, does it mean you can switch to play as them, maybe? Maybe that's what it is, where you could go into the menu, switch to play another nation, and then you could just play as them instead. Maybe that is what it means. But anyway, it kind of threw me off a little bit. The countries spawned during this situation have a custom loyalty value, which describes how loyal they're going to be to the dynasty. And this goes from -100 to +100 and grows or shrinks depending on their opinion of them. As we've seen before, this system can be tailored for these different areas, these different situations, hence the name, and they can play out differently with each one. Most rebel nations will start at -100 as they actively fought against the Empire. However, some nations spawned through the situation represent the Mongolian generals who gained a lot of autonomy but are still fighting for the Empire's cause. They will spawn with +50 loyalty. If any rebel country reaches more than 0, they will automatically leave the international organization and they will probably rejoin the Empire as they're no longer kind of in combat against them. In order to end the situation as the Empire, you will have to regain internal stability, but also ensure that the Red Turban Rebels have no members left anymore after 20 years of the start of the situation. All states spawned through the situation with over 50 loyalty will automatically be re-annexed by the Empire, so if you can basically last that time frame, anyone who has over 50 loyalty will automatically just rejoin you. So that's a pretty cool mechanic as well. However, on the other hand, the situation also ends once any rebel tag owns the majority of China, around 70% of the land. If that happens, the rebel tag which fulfills the requirements will assume the imperial throne and take over the tag of China. So that's how China will emerge out of this empire, and then you've got all these different, I would imagine, Chinese mechanics as well. The situation unlocks special diplomatic actions for the Empire and the rebels alike. Yuan can grant titles to any released state that it is not at war with, giving a significant loyalty and opinion boost in exchange for a hefty fee. They can also negotiate with local rebellions, which decreases the process for a rebellion to break out, and they can call loyalist countries, those with +50 loyalty, to their wars against the Red Turban Rebels. So again, some different mechanics there, depending on if you're trying to kind of butter up people to get them to rejoin you, or if they already like you, as they were talking about the Mongolian generals, they can actually come in and help you in your wars as well. Meanwhile, the rebel states will have a special CB against the Empire and other rebel states with a vastly reduced war score cost for Chinese locations, so this will help you actually do the war as these other nations. They also get access to an action that allows them to reign in conquested areas, greatly reducing the local integration speed, so helping them get that land and then helping them keep that land within their new realms. As you can see here, fantastic map showing this off. Green are loyal servants, orange are rebels, and red are the strongest of the rebels. So as you can see here, the Kingdom of Chen is the kind of strongest rebelling nation in there, and then you've got all the other ones around there as well, and some obviously on the side of the dynasty, and the other one's trying to get independence as well, and also shows off a little bit more of the map. With each one of these dev diaries, we are getting to see more and more of the map. You can see on there the Japanese shogunate obviously going off the map a little bit as well, and all these different areas around, which is pretty nice to see. We are slowly getting more and more information on that. Other situations using this are things like the Western Schism, which they kind of talked about last week, the 100 Years' War, and the last one there that I'm not even going to try pronounce, and I'm not 100% sure where that is, so do let me know what that is talking about in the comments down below. And they're going to talk about all of those in future dev diaries. They have said that pretty much all of these are going to have individual dev diaries in the future. As I say with each of these videos, this game is more than at least a year away, I would think. So we're going to get plenty of dev diaries up to then. And as always, I'm going to leave a link to this forum post in the description down below. And Johan actually saying here, if you have any other historical events that you think should work in a situation style, please let him know in the comments, because they're obviously ramping up. They're starting to build more and more of these out. So if you've got an idea of how this could work in a certain area, a certain conflict or something, do go on there, let him know, and he does reply as always every week to a lot of the questions on there as we cover in our usual Friday videos. And then to finish off, next week they're going to talk about something that many people have asked for repeatedly. So what that is, who knows? Does he mean a system? Like a new system that is new to the game that people have asked for that wasn't in EU4? Or does it just mean a system that was in there and that we've just been asking about, like, give us more information about, you know, trade or colonization? I think it's going to be colonization next week. I think that's what he means. People have been asking, like, how does colonization work in this game? And I think that is potentially what's going to be covered next week, but we will obviously find out next Wednesday. And as always, I'll be covering it on the channel in a video like this. But that is the dev diary for this week. Let me know what you think of the system in the comments down below. I think this looks fantastic. I think this is such a cool way for them to bring flavor to certain areas of the map, as they did say that was the primary feature of this. And I can only imagine in the future as well, once the game comes out, all these different things they can add in the future to set up certain events in certain areas, especially as they look like they are dynamic, so certain nations could trigger the same kind of event. So I think this is just going to bring a lot of potential for the future. I think this is fantastic. Hopefully next week's is good too. But as always, if you've enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here. I'm covering EU5 up to official announcement, launch, and beyond, and I also cover Crusader Kings on the channel. I do also play other historical strategy games as well, but we'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next one.